So what's the number one mistake founder make when pitching to investors?
The number one mistake, it's a good question. I think one of the biggest mistakes founders make is to not put themselves in the shoes of the investor. Because pitch meetings are a little bit like a dance. The VC has to put themselves into the shoes of the founder, and the founder has to put themselves into the shoes of the investor. And in the end, we're just two people or a group of people having a conversation about a product or a service that can hopefully make a really big impact in the world. And once I think you come to realize that a VC is also just a person, a friend, hopefully, that, you know, actually also wants the success of your startup, because when you succeed as a founder, they succeed. But they also have metrics, just like you, right, in order to succeed. Then I think that it becomes more of pulling along the same string, you know, walking the same path, rather than a scary pitch meeting.
What's an instant no for you when you're deciding to invest in a startup?
One of the big no's is, I think, if a founder comes in with a certain attitude and a little bit arrogant maybe, as well as not willing to take on feedback or have a conversation. I've recently spoken to a company that said that they're building the same thing as you, and the reaction of the founder is very negative and very defensive. That's usually a bit of a red flag, because the reason why I'm saying that is not because I think that they should not defend their product, but I think it's a little bit of a sign that under pressure comes slightly, maybe too much emotion into the play. Act and react in a very calm, conversational way and explain maybe why the venture capitalist is wrong in his or her assumption, or why, you know, you are actually doing what you say you're doing, even if they challenge you on that.
So if you had just 60 seconds to evaluate a startup, what would you look at first?
Founding team, composition of the team and complementary skill sets, product market fit, and timing.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying that the founder, on which number or the process, like, you know, where do you put the founder?
In an early stage investment, so pre-seed, seed investments, a lot of people think that venture capitalists have a lot of power because they have the money, they can make or break, you know, a success of a startup, but that's not true. I think some startups are just not made for venture capital investment. They can grow organically. They can just get revenue in and grow through that. They can scale through that. They don't need massive growth from one day to the next because of venture capital money. And you know, we see some of the very, very successful startups or companies that never raised from a VC, right? So that's just, I think, a misconception that without VC money, you can't be successful. That's just not true. So that takes away power from a VC, right? You as a founder can choose to go different routes, also through grants or other ways. Bootstrapping, which is hard, I know, but it's also an option, right, until you reach a certain scale and create your own revenue.
What do you think where the world is going with AI? And you must be listening, you know, a lot of pitch decks, and like, you know, people should be coming to you and talking about AI. So is there, like, what are the percentage of, like, you know, project these days coming in the AI sector?
Many projects have an AI component now, at least on their pitch deck. Sometimes when I've asked what is the actual AI component, they said, oh, we use AI in the background to analyze our data. Okay, well, not quite an AI startup, but fair enough. I also use ChatGPT.
That's true.
But anyways, I think AI is actually an incredible advancement, and I think it is very, you know, symbiotic. It works very well with blockchain technology because it can make blockchain technology more usable, interfaces more attractive for a broader audience. It can also help us with a lot of the difficult coding aspects. in the long run, of course, there's some issues there with security, but overall it can help us because it is complex and there are not that many developers in the Web3 space for all the different languages we have, specifically senior. And so I think it's great that we have AI. It's scary, but it's here, so we need to work with it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Harmony Hour with Deepa, and today we have a powerhouse in the world of venture capital and Web3 investment, someone who's shaping the future of blockchain startups across the globe. So what is this episode about? So someone who is dreaming of starting their own startup, this episode is for you. Who is someone who has the biggest challenge in building a startup and securing funds, so this episode is you. So she is an investor at Token Trust Investment AG, a leading VC firm fueling some of the most destructive blockchain startup across Europe, USA, UAE and Asia. With years of experience in strategy consulting, venture building and entrepreneurship, she has mentored founder at top accelerators like Harvard Blockchain, Hub 71 Abu Dhabi, Ripple and Oxford University Expert Networks. So she is not just investing in startups, she is helping build the decentralized future of the internet. So let's welcome Mona Tiesler, an investor, mentor and blockchain visionary who knows exactly what it takes to turn an idea into a funded, thriving business. So let's welcome Mona to the podcast. So welcome, and how are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really well. How are you?
I'm also good, and thank you for joining me today here. And I have so many questions like regarding a lot of things, but starting off talking about your journey, how did you find in venture capital? Because a lot of people just dream about it, but you're doing something very amazing. So what's the backstory of Mona?
Oh, it's a long story. I'll try to be concise. Essentially, I started my journey after university in management consulting in London. And I did almost 4 years in London being a strategic consultant for large corporations. And then I wanted to do a little bit more entrepreneurial work. So I went back to Germany, where I'm from, and I became the country manager of an education technology startup that had just launched in New Zealand. And I built up the German entity and expanded it across Europe. So was really doing a very entrepreneurial role because I was building the whole of that European landscape with this platform, which was super exciting. But I also felt like I wanted to do some more project-based work, similar to my consulting days. So I was trying to find a job that combines both the curious, constantly changing work that I did in consulting and the entrepreneurial, direct impact type work that I had in the entrepreneurial role. So I went to my MBA school in SEAD to learn a little bit more about financial services and just expand my network globally. And my plan was then, okay, I think I found it. Venture capital, that's the best combination, and wanted to go into that after I finished INSEAD. But the problem was it was the pandemic, and it was really hard to find a job. And also venture capital is really hard to get into.
Yeah.
So I struggled a little bit. And other venture capital firms who I was interviewing with, they were like, look, either we usually hire people that were investment bankers before, or we hire people that were very successful entrepreneurs. Or we hire people that have worked in, highly venture-backed companies that were very successful, and therefore we then kind of hire them from their, scale-up role. So I was like, okay, I hear you. So I founded a startup in the food tech space. And I also joined a scale-up in the blockchain space.
Okay.
And that was my start to venture capital and blockchain. I worked in those entrepreneurial roles another year, tried to build up the startup while working at a scale-up in Berlin. And long story short, eventually ended up being a venture capital investor at a German venture fund. And here I am still doing that and loving it. I really think it was actually the perfect combination of the two roles.
That's very interesting, actually. So I was just talking to the audience that this episode is all about, the founders who struggle about, what exactly the venture capital look while they start their journey. Like everyone is very excited in the beginning. So there are like so many questions I just want to ask you.
Yeah, please.
So let's start. So what's the number one mistake founder make when pitching to investors?
The number one mistake, it's a good question. I think one of the biggest mistakes founders make is to not put themselves in the shoes of the investor. Because pitch meetings are a little bit like a dance. The VC has to put themselves into the shoes of the founder, and the founder has to put themselves into the shoes of the investor. And in the end, we're just two people or a group of people having a conversation about a product or a service that can hopefully make a really big impact in the world.
Yeah.
And once I think you come to realize that a VC is also just a person, a friend, hopefully, that, actually also wants the success of your startup, because when you succeed as a founder, they succeed. But they also have metrics, just like you, right, in order to succeed. Then I think that it becomes more of pulling along the same string, walking the same path, rather than a scary pitch meeting. And I think the biggest mistake is that founders come into these meetings a little bit scared, a little bit intimidated, or think that, they have to make a huge impression, otherwise everything is over. That's not true. I think it should be more of a conversation and finding if it's a good fit. Because again, you're kind of married for a bit, right? When you're working with a venture capital firm. So it should work for both the founder and the VC. So it's an interview on both sides, but hopefully walking the same path.
Okay, that's quite interesting. And I think a lot of people want that answer. So the next one is that what's an instant no for you when you're deciding to invest in a startup?
One of the big no's is, I think, if a founder comes in with a certain attitude and a little bit arrogant maybe, as well as not willing to take on feedback or have a conversation. We often experience that a founder is so in love with their project, which they should be, and I love that, and I think I was really in love with my project when I was building. But it's important to defend your project and have a really good answer for everything that is asked. But if you hear something that says, oh, I've recently spoken to a company that said that they're building the same thing as you, and the reaction of the founder is very negative and very defensive, that's usually a bit of a red flag, because the reason why I'm saying that is not because I think that they should not defend their product, but I think it's a little bit of a sign that under pressure comes slightly, maybe too much emotion into the play. And as a founder, it's a hard journey. You have a lot of ups and downs. You have a lot of, things that happen that you didn't plan, and you have to be quite resilient.
Yeah.
So I want to see that, right? And a founder, I want to see your resilience. I want you to be open to have a discussion with me. I want you to prove me wrong if I say the wrong thing, for sure. But it should be a friendly conversation and not so much a defensive or dismissive reaction from a founder.
That's so good. Like you're saying that you should not be very protective about what you're building.
No, I think you can be protective. It's your baby, right? I'm sure you will be protective, and you should be. But it's about the attitude. I think what's really important is to make sure that you act and react in a very calm, conversational way, and explain maybe why the venture capitalist is wrong in his or her assumption, or why you are actually doing what you say you're doing, even if they challenge you on that, rather than exploding and being very loud and defensive, because that's not usually a very good sign that you will be working well together in a relationship in this way, because it is some sort of relationship between the founder and the VC, hopefully a really positive one that's helping the founder to succeed in the long run.
Right. So if you had just 60 seconds to evaluate a startup, what would you look at first?
Founding team, composition of the team and complementary skill sets, product market fit, and timing.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying that the founder, on which number or the process, like, where do you put the founder?
In an early stage investment, so pre-seed, seed investments, the founder, the founding team are probably the most important. And I mean that in the sense of whatever skill set the founder has, maybe some of the weaker points. Do you have other people in the team or co-founders that kind of complement you in your skill set? And can you work together really well for a really long time, right? That's really, really important.
Yeah.
And do you have the prerequisites to build something potentially very technically challenging, right? I would like to see those things. And if you don't have them as a founder, do you have someone in your team who does, right? And you just complement each other. I think that's really, really important. And that's what I look for in pre-seed startups. I would say that's probably the most important, which then also leads me to another thing, which means, like, are you able to pivot, right? Maybe the market changes.
Yes.
Maybe your conditions changes, right? Something changes. You should be able to pivot and to be reactive to what comes your way. And that's a really important trait of any founding team in conjunction with skill set and, of course, passion as well.
Yeah. So you're saying that if you have a good team and the competition of the team is very good, like always syncing with each other and so it will work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So what's the one startup pitch that blew your mind instantly?
Ooh, that's a good question. A one startup pitch. I hear so many pitches every day, and it sounds cheesy, but honestly, most of them really blow my mind because I have the privilege to listen to some of the most intelligent builders every day, all day, and they educate me. They educate me, and I am grateful for it. And hopefully I can give a little bit of my knowledge back to them, but overall, they educate me. And what I see in terms of technological advancements, in terms of, hybrid models of different technologies kind of being combined into creating something new. Also even consumer applications, looking at, new markets, different markets, providing very innovative, ideas and thinking about how can we change and impact the world for the better. I think there's so many impressive pitches that I hear all the time. I couldn't really nail down one. And I'm just in awe with a lot of the builders. Like, they're just incredible.
Nice. So what is one of the biggest misconceptions about venture capitalists?
Well, I think that a lot of people think that venture capitalists have a lot of power because they have the money, they can make or break, a success of a startup. But that's not true. I think some startups are just not made for venture capital investment. They can grow organically.
Yeah.
They can just get revenue in and grow through that. They can scale through that. They don't need massive growth from one day to the next because of venture capital money. And we see some of the very, very successful startups or companies that never raised from a VC, right? So that's just, I think, a misconception that without VC money, you can't be successful. That's just not true. So that takes away power from a VC, right? You as a founder can choose to go different routes, also through grants or other ways. Bootstrapping, which is hard, I know, but it's also an option, right? Until you reach a certain scale and create your own revenue. And I also think what's generally the case is venture capitalists often also follow other venture capitalists.
Yeah.
So not all of them will be super innovative and have a super clear opinion on what you're building.
Right.
Most of the times, the builders, the founders are much, much smarter and much more knowledgeable than the venture capitalists, because we can't know everything, right? We hear so many pitches, and you're the expert of your product, of your industry, of your service. So in the end, you're educating the VC, and the power actually lies with you as the founder. And I think that's a really important thing to never forget. Also, when you go into these meetings, if you're a bit nervous, because in the end, they can be glad to invest in you, right? And I think that's a good attitude to enter a deal with.
Wow. So if a founder has no network or funding, what should they get an investor's attention? How can they get an investor's attention?
This is also a really good question, because it's really hard, right? Like, I genuinely think that is a very big problem. And I've noticed this when I was at conferences, you know, when I spoke on panels, for example, on stage, or moderated something or had a speech. People came to me afterwards and they said, hey, you know, nice to meet you. How can I get in contact with you? I don't know how to reach out to VCs. It's really tough.
Yeah.
And I realized, it's true, right? Without this warm intro through your network, cold emails are tough. They don't really land. LinkedIn outreach, also very, very difficult to actually get investors' attention. So what do you do? And I think one thing is to go to these conferences, to go to in-person events, specifically in the Web3 space. There's a lot happening. In most bigger cities, there are meetups, events that are hosted by companies in the space, obviously these big conferences. I know that comes with a price tag, because you have to fly there, you have to drive there, I get that. But at least a lot of these events are not ticketed, so at least they are free if they're a side event. And you do actually meet a lot of people during these conferences to create your own network, to then have the potential for warm introductions or making your own network. The other thing, one thing that I thought of is actually an initiative that I'm working on called distributed funding. And it's basically, I'm trying to build a platform, very simple, nothing fancy, where people can upload their pitch deck and answer a very detailed questionnaire, and where we get venture capital funds to commit to looking at these pitch decks that are within their thesis in order to avoid that warm introduction piece. Wow. So I'm trying to bring that to life, and it's in the works, because I do think that is a big hurdle, and specifically for people who are not living in areas that have these events, that could maybe help. Something like that could help.
Actually, that's very interesting. Yeah.
So I'm hoping to launch that.
All the best.
And I hope that will bring, you know, a little bit of support. It has no monetary value. It's not a business. I was just trying to figure out a platform.
Yeah. Because I feel a lot of founders out there who doesn't have any network, because in Web3 it's just like net worth is your network, and people try their best in the Web3 conferences and wherever they come, that, you know, they are running behind people who they want to network, especially the VCs. They run behind, because they know funding, they need it. So that's an interesting, and all the best for that.
Yeah, hopefully it will actually, you know, serve its purpose. We will see, but it's genuinely a problem, and I think we need to work on solving that. It's
actually very interesting, something you're very interesting. I'm definitely sure that a lot of founder will get a lot of good things out of this, because everybody's ready with the pitch, but they don't know where to pitch, to whom to pitch, right?
Yeah.
So
I know it's really tough. And even myself, I have so many messages in my LinkedIn inbox, and I want to answer them, because I know how it feels to be a founder sending out email and LinkedIn requests and messages. But it's really hard to find the time to do it on top of my everyday job. So you really need a different way to get to the VCs. And warm intros are tough. I know.
Yeah. So, what's a startup sector that you're secretly betting big on for the future?
Ooh, a startup sector within Web3.
Yeah, maybe you can say AI, whatever, what is
Yeah.
interesting coming up.
Um, it's a good question. So my expertise is mainly within the Web3 blockchain space, and I always say I think we've spent a lot of time and incredible knowledge and resources on building the infrastructure that can power applications that are actually useful and used by the retail consumer that doesn't necessarily need to be in the blockchain space. And I think what's interesting that's going to be coming up is actually applications and things that are built on blockchain infrastructure with all the incredible advancements we've made in terms of scalability, in terms of timing, in terms of throughput time, that we can now put together really strong applications and services that can service a much broader range of people than just the Web3 degens, and make an impact in the everyday world, even with for example powering in traditional industries to just make them a bit more efficient, and getting rid of, for example, the notary, which I know is a typical example, but it's a really unnecessary job.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it is, because you can use blockchain to actually have a clear timestamp, and it's immutable and it's transparent. So things like that, and I'm looking and I'm hoping that all the infrastructure we've built and finessed and are still finessing can actually lead to an exciting new era of applications and real world applications of blockchain technology under the hood.
Wow, that's very interesting actually. So, if a startup has an average idea but the founder is amazing, right? So, everybody says that, people, it's just not about the idea, it's always about the founder as well. So, will you invest in that in the case of if the founder is amazing but the idea you think it's like 50-50?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the point of pivoting, right? I would say sometimes you can work with the founder and you can say, look, why do you think this is such a good idea? And what other areas could we be looking at? How could we expand this idea? The founder is probably one of the most, or the founding team is probably one of the most important aspects, as I've mentioned before. But of course, if that founding team is not really willing to pivot or very defensive of the idea without willing to listen to feedback, that then doesn't make them as much of an investable founder to me.
Okay.
But if they're willing to listen, to think about it, to learn from the market, maybe I'm wrong, right?
Yeah.
I could also be very well wrong.
Yeah.
And so if I believe in the founder, if I have the impression, okay, they can pivot, they can listen to the market, they're flexible, and they're willing to just be successful and build something that is needed and deviate maybe from the current idea, then absolutely.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying that if the founder is ready to change their mind and work on the product again and again, so you can just work.
Yes.
Okay. So what's a pitch line that instantly caught your attention? Is there I'm not sure one-liner, but
Well, to answer this question, I think what caught my attention even to go into the blockchain space was the one-liner, banking the unbanked.
okay.
Because to me, it was very interesting. I mean, this was about Bitcoin 2013, so it was a while ago that I read this. But when I read it, I was like, wow, we need this. Because there are thousands, millions of people that have no bank account and no access to the traditional banking rails. They're cut out of, creating wealth for themselves because they're not able to function in the Western traditional system that is dominating a lot of the financial markets. And so I think there's Western and Eastern, but you know what I mean. So that one-liner really caught my attention, and that was about blockchain technology as a whole, with primarily showcasing Bitcoin. But I think that's what really brought me into the industry and made me want to, dedicate my full time.
Okay. Talking about Web3, what do you think after Trump? Where is it going and how the market is going to perform? It's just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so right now, I mean, obviously we have a little bit of a downturn, and the sentiment is, let's call it dampered.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I personally think this is just a short-term correction. I think we might go lower, but I also think that we still have an upside to see this year.
Yeah.
I think we will go back up. I think that we still have juice in this cycle.
Yeah.
What I don't think is necessarily priced in yet is the fact that because of the Trump administration, love it or hate it, but I believe there will be regulatory clarity or more regulatory clarity in the US for Web3 startups.
Yeah.
At least on some regard, maybe at least within the stablecoin or in the payment sector, but there will be more regulatory clarity. And I'm not sure this has been priced in yet. And when that comes, I think a lot of things will open up and a lot of institutional interest will flow into the market even more so than it has, which therefore brings more capital and also potentially more movement, like maybe there's acquisitions that going to happen, right? Maybe there's more R&D money that will flow into examining the blockchain technology space. And that's what I think can be a catalyst for us to see more upward movement after our very bleak little downturn here.
Yeah, in short, we'll have more opportunities in the Web3 sector.
Yeah, I think so. I think regulatory clarity can bring more opportunity.
Yeah. So what's one Web3 startup trend that's completely overhyped right now?
Ooh, I mean, I think meme coins and AI agents. Okay. I'm sorry. But it's just, so I'm not a big contender of meme coins. To me, I think it's actually taking away from a lot of the startups that are building real utility. And a lot of these altcoins are not given any kind of recognition.
Yeah.
People are not researching what these companies are doing. They're not looking at, the longer term vision within the Web3 space. And that's really sad. And more speculation and more interest in meme coins is taking away so much liquidity from a lot of the amazing altcoins that we have. And therefore, I think that's overhyped.
Yeah. Talking about AI, what do you think where the world is going with AI? And you must be listening, a lot of pitch decks and people should be coming to you and talking about AI. So is there what are the percentage of project these days coming in the AI sector?
Many projects have an AI component now, at least on their pitch deck.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I've asked what is the actual AI component, they said, oh, we use AI in the background to analyze our data. Okay. Well, not quite an AI startup, but fair enough. I also use ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's true.
But anyways, I think AI is actually an incredible advancement, and I think it is very, symbiotic. It works very well with blockchain technology because it can make blockchain technology more usable, interfaces more attractive for a broader audience. It can also help us with a lot of the difficult coding aspects in the long run. Of course, there's some issues there with security, but overall it can help us because it is complex and there are not that many developers in the Web3 space for all the different languages we have, specifically senior. And so I think it's great that we have AI. It's scary. But it's here, so we need to work with it. And I think we can work with it well to advance the Web3 space. But I don't think everybody needs AI on their pitch deck. I don't think we need another 600 companies doing AI agent infrastructure.
Yeah.
But I think that craze will continue for a while. But as a founder, I would really think about what do I need AI for?
Yeah.
And how do I use AI in order to actually advance my product rather than putting AI just on my pitch deck because I think that'll get me funding. A good investor, I would argue, can see right through that and actually see that as a bit of a negative.
Okay. So, if you had to bet all your money on one Web3 sector for the next 5 years, what would it be?
Ooh. One Web3 sector for 5 years. Ooh, that's really tough because Web3 changes so
Very
fast.
yeah.
But not to repeat myself, but I do think that the intersection between artificial intelligence and blockchain technology is a sector we need to watch. And there's so much that can come out of that intersection that I think it will power a lot of the Web3 space going forward.
Yeah, I also think so because the AI is overtaking everything and we
Yeah.
are a crazy people. Like, just talking about ChatGPT,
Yeah.
I think the entire industry has started and there is no one. You
Yeah.
know, these days people are not typing it, just like, you just switch it on, you speak and you'll get your answer. Like Google is also diminishing somewhere, I don't know exactly, but yeah, I see around me everyone is using it. So AI is going crazy.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. Yeah.
So what's the biggest lie founder tell in a pitch meeting?
Ooh, the biggest lie. I'll tell you about what they definitely shouldn't do.
Okay.
So one of the lies they shouldn't tell is write investors on their pitch deck or mention investor names when they haven't 100% committed.
Okay.
That's usually a red flag because if the VC does due diligence and they ask the VCs that you've mentioned as a founder that are committed
Yeah.
and they say, no, we had one call.
Okay.
That's really a negative reflection then with both VCs because you might have
yeah.
burnt your bridges on both ends.
Yeah.
So don't over exaggerate partnerships, VC investment. Just be honest and say, we had a call. I think it went very well. We're going to go into the next stage. Or we're talking to XYZ partner, XYZ VC. It's better to do it that way than over exaggerate or even mention their name in official documentation because that can really backfire.
Yeah, actually they should not do.
Yeah,
I
right.
also
And
agree.
I've seen that happen. I really have seen that
Yeah.
happen. And that's like a little bit of a red flag.
So it's a red flag.
Yeah.
So you must have cancelled it or
Yeah, and canceled it. And I think also the partner or the VC that was asked, they also canceled their
Okay.
engagement, right? Because they didn't feel that it was a trustworthy
Yeah.
partner anymore.
right. So if you could invest in one startup from history,
Oh,
which one would it be and why?
ooh, one startup from history.
I think there must be so many.
Yeah, there are actually a lot. Well, I mean, it's a good question. I think obviously one startup I would have invested in if I was around already. I'm not OG enough, but I obviously would have loved to be part of the Bitcoin
Okay.
earners, early supporters, as well as
Yeah.
Ethereum early supporters,
Yeah.
because those two are networks that
Yeah.
are powering so much of this industry, that to have been part of their journey from the very beginning,
Yeah.
I think would be incredible, because I think my knowledge base would be a very different one.
Yeah.
So obviously that would have been great, but I didn't come into the industry early enough. I didn't participate back then, and I still think, I mean, there's so many startups while I was an investor that I missed that are incredible. I mean, in the recent cycle, I think two that I missed would have been Eigenlayer and Ethena. I think both of them very disruptive. I call them like challengers in their own way. Restaking became a massive narrative. Stable coins, in the way that Ethena is structured, right? It became a huge narrative, and these companies did very well. I don't know how they're going to do in 3 years.
Yeah.
But what I really like about them and what I like to invest in are challengers, like companies and founding teams that really bring something new, that challenge the status quo, that set a new precedent. And yes, there may be companies that come afterwards that do better, that are around longer, but they set the precedent, they start something, and they start a movement. And I think that's really, really exciting.
Okay. Talking about Ethereum, where do you see, like, in the future it's going to? Because people surrounding me and so they are shifting from Ethereum to Solana because they see a lot of scope in the Solana projects and everything. So what do you think? Where is Ethereum going, and what are the, like, I'll just ask that, what are the challenges Ethereum is facing right now? Because there must be some projects which is coming up or something.
Yeah.
Why the market is going so down in the Ethereum, in short?
Yeah, I mean, my perception is Ethereum, a lot of companies build on Ethereum or layer 2s of Ethereum because of the network effects.
Yeah.
Right? This is the biggest ecosystem. The network effects are incredible, and a lot of investors are investing in that ecosystem, and so I understand why you were building on it. There are, of course, some issues. There's scalability issues still, right? There are, sometimes I feel like maybe some shorter term fixes that are, ensuring that things move on. And obviously some of the smartest developers, some of the most incredible people are working within the Ethereum ecosystem. So, I mean, hats off, right, to the people that are developing in the space. But new advancements have come, right?
Yeah.
New technology, looking at Move, for example, Move language. So Sui, as an example, that is a much easier coding language, and it's a lot less complex. It has a lot less parts that are, they are combining more microservices into one specific kind of network. And even though, Sui is nowhere even close to the ecosystem or others than Ethereum, technology is advancing, right?
Yeah.
And it's advancing fast, and builders are coming up with better options for developers that are just easier to develop on. And given legacy, I think there's issues there with like cost, with speed, with scalability, which, of course, you can argue there are so many ways that this has been fixed, but sleeker versions of tech are coming onto the market, and even sleeker than Solana. So I don't know where it's going, but I can see that, we need more developers, we need more applications to be built within the blockchain technology space. And I think a lot of developers are starting to look for chains or networks that allow them to just be faster, just easier.
Yeah.
So that's my take on this. Let's see.
Yeah. Okay, going back to venture capital again. So you are a VC yourself. So be honest, are VCs really looking at ideas, or it is just about who the founder knows?
Oh, who the founder knows. No, I don't think I would look at only who the founder knows, or more than the idea. I definitely wouldn't say that. I know the why you're asking, and I think it's a good question. I think they look at the founder and the idea, both.
Okay.
But like we talked about earlier, part of the founder and the founding team, of course, there is also the ability for the founder to get partnerships, to grow the network or their product or whatever they're pitching, their service, and to make this happen, right? Because a lot of it's uncharted territory. We're still building a relatively nascent industry, one could argue. So it's hard to say, because there is, of course, if they are very well connected and they already have a lot of partners lined up and a lot of potential revenue coming in due to the network they bring to the table, that is a green flag for sure.
Okay.
But it doesn't necessarily only mean that we would invest in people that come with a huge network, because that's very wrong. I think that's very, very wrong.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to ask that what is like one piece of advice to the founders who are just starting and wants to connect? So what are like 5 qualities you want to say that before going or pitching to the VCs, you should look these, like, it should be a checklist that you should checklist all of these things and before going and pitching to VCs.
Ooh, okay, you're putting me on the spot here. I didn't. Okay, 5 things. Checklist. So, I mean, have you prepared your pitch and your pitch deck? Are there no spelling mistakes, please?
Okay.
Just make sure that it looks aesthetically pleasing and that your pitch is polished. I think that's checklist number 1. It's very simple, but it's really important because it really doesn't resonate well when the founder is not prepared.
Yeah.
And when the materials that they provide are just very subpar and don't look like any effort went into them, because that kind of shows that might not get effort into other things. So that's 1. 2, and this is for a meeting, right? You're saying during a pitch meeting.
Yeah.
Make sure that you are professional, your camera's on, that you're on time, or at least said a reason why you're not on time prior, and also answer the questions of the VC.
Yeah.
So leave a bit of time to, if it's a 30-minute call, make sure that you have at least 10 minutes for the VC to ask questions, to have a bit of a discussion, and also get to know each other, right? That's really important as well. Then I would say what is also really important for a founder during a pitch meeting is that they have a call to action or some sort of, follow-up. So what is your process? Founder asking the VC.
Yeah.
What is your process? How long does it usually take? Maybe say, okay, we have a timeline. We want to close this round within 2 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. Can you make that timeline, and when can we hear back from you? So that you have some sort of accountability, and as a founder, without being annoying, then you have a reason to follow up and say, hey, we haven't heard from you for 2 weeks. We mentioned that we wanted to close our round now. Where do you stand? Can we set up a follow-up call? Do you have further questions? Then it's a very natural reason to follow up with them in case they haven't answered you or didn't get back to you since the pitch. Then I would say research the VC beforehand. Make sure you kind of know who they are, what they invest in. Ideally, you should do that before you even reach out to them or you even schedule the call. They should do that too, right? It's on both of you. But in case, they don't do gaming at all and you're a gaming startup, maybe then they will waste 30 minutes of your time or more and then tell you at the end, thank you so much, but we don't actually invest in gaming. And then you're like, well, great, right? So research them up front, and maybe that will also help you then to tailor your pitch a bit to what they need. If they're very focused on, for example, payment infrastructure, and you have an aspect around payment infrastructure, mention that. Right? And then you can say, well, we do this and this, and part of our infrastructure is also payments. At least you're kind of checking off the boxes and giving them maybe what they want to hear. Of course, not lying, but just embellishing or highlighting. Not embellishing, that's a terrible word. But highlighting, the positives that are also resonating with what the VC is looking for. And then lastly, I would say make sure that the VC also has a chance to talk, right? So I said that kind of before, but just to reiterate that point again, if you just spend the whole time speaking and they keep on trying to ask a question, but you're so in the flow, that might not work so well.
So in short, it's a two-way process, not
Yes.
just like, if you're pitching, so you are not the only one who will speak.
Yes.
It's the other two-way round. Okay. So it was a great session. We are at the end of the time, but it was so good, Mona, and I got all the answers of my
Nice.
questions. And so I want to ask the last one, that what is one piece of advice for the founder who are just starting and looking like, they are. So I'll tell you, all the founders I meet, and who are in the funding round, like, they are going to, and they are so sad. They are so
Aw.
scared. Like, so we are going for funding. It looks like they are going for a war in their mind. And like, so what is one piece of advice you want to give to all the starting founders who are like, looking for funding? So what are the, you already mentioned everything, the process, like, you should checklist and everything, but what is one piece of advice that they should always have in their mind before going to VCs? And, like maybe you can help them, because like, they also need some resting state of their mind, that, you should not be worried or something. So you are the best person who can give this advice. So what is that advice?
Like I said earlier, they're just people. So as much as you might think you need their money, they also need you,
Yeah.
because you might be bringing an incredible product, service, infrastructure to the market, which they are a part of, which they are allowed to participate in. So remember, it's a two-way street, and it's really you who's the asset.
Yeah.
The venture capitalist will just give you money, hopefully network, advice, and drive value.
Yeah.
But you're the real doer and the maker, so you have the power, not the VC.
Wow, that's a great advice. And it was so good to have you. So thank you, Mona, for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. So if you guys like this podcast, and if you want to ask any questions, so you can ask the question in the comment section, and please like and subscribe my channel. Thank you.